The weight of Wayne James' exhaustion seemed to radiate through the apartment like heat from a furnace, and Philip White could feel it the moment Wayne collapsed onto the couch beside him. Wayne's shoulders sagged with a weariness that went deeper than physical fatigue, his usually bright eyes dulled by whatever storm had battered him throughout the week. Philip had been reading when Wayne arrived, but the book now lay forgotten in his lap as he studied his friend's profile, noting the tight line of Wayne's jaw and the way his fingers trembled slightly as he ran them through his dark hair. Wayne had said he'd had a rough week, the words tumbling out in a rush as soon as Philip opened the door, but the simple phrase carried the weight of something much heavier. Philip could see it in the way Wayne held himself, as if he were carrying invisible burdens that threatened to crush him at any moment. The apartment felt charged with unspoken tension, the air thick with everything Wayne wasn't saying and everything Philip desperately wanted to ask but didn't dare. It was only when Philip reached out, almost without thinking, and placed his hand on Wayne's back that he felt the change. The moment his palm made contact with the warm fabric of Wayne's shirt, he felt Wayne's entire body relax, as if some invisible string that had been holding him rigid suddenly snapped. Wayne's breathing deepened, his shoulders dropping as the tension seemed to flow out of him like water finding its level. Philip's hand rested between Wayne's shoulder blades, and he could feel the steady rhythm of Wayne's heartbeat through his back, could feel the way Wayne's muscles gradually unknotted under his touch. The silence stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that spoke volumes, filled with understanding and unspoken comfort. Philip kept his hand where it was, applying gentle pressure, and watched as Wayne's eyes fluttered closed, his face finally losing some of the strain that had been etched there when he arrived. There was something profoundly intimate about the moment, something that made Philip's own heart race, even as he tried to maintain the steady, calming presence that Wayne so clearly needed. But to understand how they arrived at this moment, how a simple touch could carry such weight and meaning, you'd have to go back 3 months earlier, to the night when everything between them began to shift in ways neither of them fully understood at the time. Before we see how this ends, tell us where you're watching from and hype this video in the comments. It had started with Stephen Howard's party, one of those sprawling affairs that seemed to consume entire city blocks with its energy and chaos. Philip had been nursing the same beer for over an hour, standing near the kitchen island and watching the crowd ebb and flow around him like a tide. He'd always been more comfortable on the periphery of social gatherings, content to observe rather than participate in the loud conversations and forced laughter that seemed to dominate these events. He was considering making his escape when Wayne appeared beside him, seemingly out of nowhere, with that easy smile that had always made Philip's stomach do strange things. Wayne looked effortlessly handsome in the dim party lighting, his hair slightly mussed from the crowded rooms and his shirt open at the collar in a way that drew Philip's eyes before he could stop himself. There was something magnetic about Wayne's presence, a warmth and confidence that seemed to pull people into his orbit without any conscious effort on his part. Philip had known Wayne for years, had watched him navigate social situations with an ease that Philip envied. But tonight there was something different about him, a restless energy that seemed barely contained beneath his casual exterior. They talked about nothing important at first, the kind of surface-level conversation that parties demanded, but Philip found himself studying Wayne's face as they spoke, noting the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed and the way his hand gestured expressively as he told some story about his latest work project. There was something hypnotic about watching Wayne talk, about the way his entire being seemed to light up when he was engaged in conversation, and Philip found himself drawn deeper into Wayne's orbit despite his usual inclination to keep his distance. It was when the conversation turned to relationships that Philip noticed the change. Wayne's easy smile faltered slightly when Philip asked about his latest girlfriend, a question that should have been simple and straightforward, but somehow landed with unexpected weight. Wayne's fingers tightened around his beer bottle, and for just a moment, his carefully maintained composure slipped, revealing something raw and uncertain underneath. Wayne had been dating Michelle Hill for about 6 months, a relationship that looked perfect from the outside but seemed to leave Wayne increasingly hollow with each passing week. Michelle was beautiful and successful, the kind of woman that other men envied Wayne for being with. But when Wayne talked about her, there was no spark in his eyes, no genuine warmth in his voice. Instead, there was a kind of resigned acceptance, as if he were going through the motions of a relationship because it was expected of him, rather than because it brought him any real joy or fulfillment. Philip had watched this pattern repeat itself throughout their friendship. Wayne would date women who were objectively wonderful, relationships that should have made him happy, but somehow never seemed to reach the depths of connection that Wayne seemed to crave. There was always something missing, some indefinable element that left Wayne feeling empty, despite being surrounded by people who cared about him. Philip had attributed it to Wayne's high standards, or perhaps his fear of commitment. But tonight, watching Wayne's face as he talked about Michelle, Philip began to suspect there was something deeper at work. The party continued around them, but Philip found himself increasingly focused on Wayne's words and the subtle expressions that flickered across his face as he spoke. Wayne talked about feeling disconnected, about going through the motions of romance without feeling the spark that everyone else seemed to experience so easily. He described dates that should have been perfect but felt hollow, conversations that skimmed the surface without ever diving into the depths he craved. There was a loneliness in Wayne's voice that Philip recognized, a sense of searching for something that remained frustratingly out of reach. As the night wore on, they found themselves gravitating toward a quieter corner of the apartment, away from the main crowd and the pounding music that made deep conversation nearly impossible. The lighting was softer here, casting gentle shadows across Wayne's face and creating an intimacy that felt both natural and charged with possibility. Philip found himself leaning closer as Wayne talked, drawn by the vulnerability in his voice and the way his usual confident facade seemed to be crumbling around the edges. Wayne's confession came in fragments, pieces of honesty that seemed to surprise him as much as they surprised Philip. He talked about feeling like he was playing a role in his relationships, performing the part of the devoted boyfriend without ever feeling truly connected to the woman beside him. He described lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, and wondering why he couldn't feel what he was supposed to feel, why the love that came so easily to others remained elusive for him. There was a desperation in his voice that made Philip's heart ache, a sense of someone lost and searching for a truth that remained just beyond his grasp. Philip listened without judgment, offering the kind of steady presence that had always come naturally to him. He'd always been the friend that others turned to when they needed someone to listen, someone who could hold space for their confusion and pain without trying to fix or change them. But with Wayne, it felt different. Every word Wayne spoke seemed to resonate in Philip's chest, creating echoes of understanding that went deeper than simple friendship. Philip found himself wanting to reach out, to offer comfort in ways that went beyond words, but he held himself back, uncertain of how such gestures might be received. The conversation drifted toward more philosophical territory as the night deepened. Wayne talked about the difference between love and companionship, about the fear that he might be fundamentally incapable of the kind of deep connection that made relationships worthwhile. Philip found himself sharing his own experiences, his own struggles with finding meaningful connection in a world that seemed to prioritize surface attraction over genuine understanding. There was something liberating about the honesty of their exchange, a sense of two people finally dropping their masks and speaking from the heart. It was during this conversation that Philip first noticed the way Wayne's eyes would linger on his face as he spoke, a attention that felt different from their usual friendly exchanges. There was an intensity in Wayne's gaze that made Philip's skin warm, a focus that seemed to see past his carefully constructed exterior to something deeper underneath. Philip found himself hyper-aware of Wayne's proximity, of the way their knees almost touched as they sat facing each other, of the way Wayne's hand rested on the couch between them, close enough that Philip could have reached out and covered it with his own. The party began to wind down around them, but neither seemed eager to break the spell of their conversation. They talked about dreams and fears, about the paths their lives had taken and the roads they wondered about but had never dared to explore. There was a quality to their exchange that felt almost confessional, as if they were sharing secrets that had never been spoken aloud before. Philip found himself revealing things he'd never told anyone, thoughts and feelings that he'd kept buried so deep he'd almost forgotten they existed. When Wayne finally mentioned that he should probably head home, there was a reluctance in his voice that suggested he was no more eager than Philip to end their conversation. They stood slowly, both seeming to recognize that something had shifted between them during the course of the evening. though neither was quite ready to name what that something was. The walk to the door felt charged with possibility. Every step weighted with the awareness that they were approaching a threshold of some kind, though what lay on the other side remained unclear. At the door, Wayne turned back to face Philip, and for a moment they simply looked at each other in silence. There was something in Wayne's expression that Philip couldn't quite read, a mixture of gratitude and confusion and something else that made Philip's heart race. Wayne reached out as if to shake hands or offer a casual goodbye hug, but his hand lingered on Philip's arm longer than friendship typically required. His fingers warmed through the fabric of Philip's shirt. The goodbye stretched longer than it should have, both of them seeming reluctant to break the connection they'd forged during their conversation. Wayne's hand remained on Philip's arm, and Philip found himself acutely aware of every point of contact between them, of the way Wayne's touch seemed to send electricity through his entire nervous system. There was something in Wayne's eyes that looked almost like longing, though for what, Philip couldn't say. When Wayne finally left, Philip found himself standing in his doorway for several minutes, watching Wayne's retreating figure and trying to process everything that had happened between them. The conversation had felt like a revelation, not just of Wayne's struggles, but of something deeper that connected them both. Philip returned to his apartment with his mind spinning, replaying every word and gesture, trying to understand the significance of what had passed between them. The days that followed were marked by a new awareness between them. Their text conversations took on a different quality, more personal and thoughtful than their usual casual exchanges. Wayne would send messages at odd hours, sharing random thoughts or asking questions that seemed to probe deeper than surface-level friendship typically allowed. Philip found himself looking forward to these messages with an intensity that surprised him, crafting his responses with more care than he'd ever given to communication with any of his other friends. They began spending more time together, though neither acknowledged that their increased contact represented any kind of change in their relationship. Wayne would show up at Philip's apartment with takeout and a bottle of wine, claiming he was in the neighborhood and thought Philip might be hungry. Philip would invite Wayne to movies and concerts, events that felt suspiciously like dates, though neither of them used that word. There was a dance happening between them, a careful choreography of approach and retreat that left both of them hyper-aware of every interaction. Philip began to notice things about Wayne that he'd never paid attention to before, or perhaps had noticed but never allowed himself to truly see. The way Wayne's face lit up when he laughed, the graceful way he moved through space, the gentle way he interacted with service workers and strangers. There was a kindness in Wayne that went deeper than mere politeness, a genuine warmth that drew people to him like moths to a flame. Philip found himself studying Wayne's hands as he talked, noting the long fingers and the way they gestured expressively, wondering what it would feel like to have those hands touch him with intention rather than the casual contact of friendship. The shift in their dynamic was subtle but unmistakable. Conversations that had once skimmed the surface now dove deep, exploring territory that felt both thrilling and dangerous. Wayne talked more openly about his dissatisfaction with his relationship with Michelle, about the growing sense that he was living someone else's life rather than his own. Philip listened with a mixture of sympathy and something else, something that felt suspiciously like hope, though he tried to push that feeling away. It was during one of these conversations that Wayne first mentioned feeling attracted to men, though he framed it as a purely hypothetical observation rather than a personal confession. He talked about noticing other men in ways that went beyond casual appreciation, about wondering what it would be like to be with someone who understood him on a level that felt currently impossible with women. Philip's heart hammered in his chest as Wayne spoke, though he tried to maintain the same calm, supportive presence he'd always offered. The conversation that changed everything happened on a rainy Thursday evening in Philip's apartment. Wayne had arrived looking more troubled than usual, his hair damp from the weather and his expression carrying the weight of some internal struggle. Philip had been cooking dinner when Wayne knocked, and he'd immediately set aside his preparations to focus on his friend's obvious distress. They'd settled on the couch with glasses of wine, the rain pattering against the windows, creating a cocoon of intimacy around them. Wayne talked about feeling trapped, about the growing realization that the life he'd built for himself didn't fit the person he was becoming. He described feeling like an actor playing a role, going through the motions of a heterosexual relationship while feeling increasingly disconnected from his own desires and needs. There was a desperation in his voice that Philip had never heard before, a sense of someone approaching a breaking point and unsure of which direction to turn. Philip found himself offering comfort in ways that felt natural, but also charged with new meaning. He moved closer to Wayne on the couch, close enough that their thighs touched, and he could feel the warmth radiating from Wayne's body. When Wayne's voice broke slightly as he described his confusion, Philip reached out and placed his hand on Wayne's knee, a gesture of support that sent electricity through both of them. The touch seemed to unlock something in Wayne, and he began talking more openly about his attraction to men, about the way certain interactions left him feeling more alive than any romantic encounter with women ever had. He talked about Philip specifically, about the way their friendship made him feel understood and valued in ways that his romantic relationships never had. There was something in Wayne's voice as he spoke Philip's name that made Philip's breath catch in his throat, a tenderness that went beyond platonic affection. Philip felt his heart racing as Wayne continued to speak, each word seeming to build towards something that felt both inevitable and terrifying. Wayne talked about wondering what it would be like to kiss a man, about fantasizing about intimate moments that had nothing to do with the women he'd been dating. His eyes met Philip's as he spoke, and there was something in his gaze that looked like a question, though neither of them was quite ready to voice what that question might be. The conversation stretched late into the night, both of them seeming reluctant to break the spell of honesty that had settled between them. Wayne talked about his fear of disappointing his family and friends, about the terror of upending his entire life for feelings he didn't fully understand. Philip listened with a mixture of empathy and growing hope, recognizing in Wayne's words his own long-buried struggles with attraction and identity. It was Philip who finally bridged the gap between them, reaching out to cup Wayne's face in his hands as Wayne's voice trailed off into uncertain silence. Wayne's skin was warm under Philip's palms, and Philip could feel the slight tremor that ran through Wayne's body at the contact. They looked at each other for a long moment, the air between them charged with possibility and the weight of unspoken desires. The kiss, when it finally happened, felt like both a revelation and a homecoming. Philip leaned forward slowly, giving Wayne every opportunity to pull away, but Wayne met him halfway, their lips coming together with a tenderness that took both of their breath away. The kiss was soft at first, exploratory, but it deepened quickly as both men gave in to feelings they'd been suppressing for months. Wayne's hands found Philip's shirt, gripping the fabric as if anchoring himself to something solid in a world that had suddenly shifted on its axis. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily, their foreheads resting together as they processed what had just happened between them. Wayne's eyes were wide with wonder and something that looked like relief, as if a puzzle piece had finally clicked into place. Philip's hands remained on Wayne's face, his thumbs brushing gently across Wayne's cheekbones as they looked at each other in the soft lamplight. The words that followed came in a rush, both men finally giving voice to feelings they'd been carrying in silence. Wayne talked about how right it felt to be this close to Philip, how natural and perfect their connection seemed compared to the forced interactions he'd experienced with women. Philip confessed to months of growing attraction, to nights spent wondering what it would be like to hold Wayne, to kiss him, to explore the connection that seemed to pulse between them whenever they were together. They spent the rest of the night talking and touching, exploring this new dimension of their relationship with a mixture of excitement and careful tenderness. Wayne seemed to come alive in a way Philip had never seen before, his usual restless energy settling into something peaceful and content. They kissed again, longer this time, with more confidence and less hesitation, both of them marveling at how natural it felt to be together in this way. As dawn approached, they found themselves lying together on Philip's couch, Wayne's head resting on Philip's chest as Philip's fingers played gently through Wayne's hair. The conversation had turned to practical matters, to the reality of what this new development meant for their lives and in relationships. Wayne would need to end things with Michelle, a conversation that filled him with dread, but also with a sense of relief that he would finally be living authentically. Philip talked about his own journey of self-discovery, about the years he'd spent trying to understand his own sexuality, and the relief he'd felt when he finally accepted his attraction to men. He shared stories of coming out to friends and family, of the challenges and joys of living openly as a gay man. Wayne listened with rapt attention, asking questions and seeking guidance as he contemplated his own coming out process. The morning brought new challenges, but also new possibilities. Wayne returned to his own apartment to shower and change, but not before making plans to see Philip again that evening. The hours apart felt strange after the intensity of their night together, both of them sending frequent text messages to maintain the connection they'd forged. Philip found himself unable to concentrate on work, his mind constantly returning to the feeling of Wayne's lips against his and the way Wayne had looked at him with such open vulnerability. Wayne's conversation with Michelle happened that afternoon, a difficult but necessary ending to a relationship that had been slowly dying for months. Michelle seemed almost relieved by Wayne's honesty, admitting that she'd sensed his growing distance and had wondered if there was someone else. When Wayne explained about Philip, about his realization regarding his sexuality, Michelle was surprisingly understanding, even offering her support as he navigated this new chapter of his life. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of discovery and adjustment. Wayne and Philip approached their new relationship with a mixture of excitement and caution, both aware that they were venturing into uncharted territory. They spent hours talking about their feelings and fears, about their hopes for the future, and their concerns about how their relationship might be received by others. Every conversation seemed to deepen their connection, revealing new layers of compatibility and understanding. Their physical relationship developed gradually, with each new level of intimacy feeling like a natural progression rather than a dramatic leap. Wayne marveled at how different it felt to be with Philip compared to his relationships with women, how every touch seemed to resonate through his entire being rather than feeling like a performance or obligation. Philip found himself constantly amazed by Wayne's responsiveness, by the way Wayne seemed to come alive under his touch in ways that spoke to a deep hunger, finally being fed. They navigated the social aspects of their relationship with varying degrees of success. Some friends were immediately supportive, celebrating their happiness and the obvious rightness of their connection. Others struggled with the change, particularly those who had known Wayne primarily through his relationships with women. Wayne's family proved more accepting than he'd feared, though there were certainly awkward moments and difficult conversations as they adjusted to this new reality. The professional challenges were minimal, both men working in environments that were generally accepting of LGBTQ relationships. Wayne worried initially about how his colleagues might react, but he found that most people cared more about his happiness than about the gender of his partner. Philip had been out at work for years, so Wayne's presence in his life was simply seen as a positive development rather than a shocking revelation. As their relationship stabilized and deepened, both men found themselves reflecting on the journey that had brought them together. Wayne often marveled at how much more authentic his life felt now, how the constant sense of something being missing had been replaced by a deep contentment and sense of rightness. He talked about feeling like himself for the first time in years, about the relief of no longer having to perform a version of masculinity and sexuality that had never truly fit him. Philip found his own sense of fulfillment in watching Wayne bloom in their relationship. The restless, searching quality that had always characterized Wayne seemed to settle into something peaceful and grounded. Wayne's natural warmth and charisma remained, but they were now directed towards someone who could truly appreciate and reciprocate them. Philip felt privileged to be the recipient of Wayne's newfound authenticity, to be the person Wayne chose to share his most vulnerable and genuine self with. Their domestic life developed its own rhythms and traditions. Wayne spent most nights at Philip's apartment, gradually moving more of his belongings there until they were essentially living together. They discovered shared interests and complementary differences, finding ways to support each other's individual growth while building something beautiful together. Weekend mornings became sacred time, spent in bed talking and touching, and simply enjoying each other's presence without the pressures of the outside world. The sexual aspect of their relationship continued to be a source of wonder and discovery for both of them. Wayne approached physical intimacy with an enthusiasm and curiosity that had been absent from his relationships with women, eager to explore and learn and give pleasure in return. Philip found himself constantly moved by Wayne's openness and trust, by the way Wayne surrendered to sensation and connection with such complete abandon. They traveled together, creating new memories in places that held no associations with Wayne's previous life. A weekend in the mountains became a celebration of Wayne's first Pride Month as an out gay man, complete with rainbow flags and the kind of uninhibited joy that comes from finally living authentically. They attended pride events in their city, Wayne marveling at the sense of community and belonging he'd never experienced before. The challenges they faced were typical of any new relationship, complicated slightly by the additional pressures of Wayne's recent coming out and the adjustment period that followed. There were moments of doubt and fear, times when the magnitude of the changes in Wayne's life felt overwhelming. Philip proved to be a steady and patient partner during these difficult periods, offering support without trying to fix or rush Wayne's process of self-discovery. Wayne's relationship with his family continued to evolve, with some members being more accepting than others. His parents struggled initially but came around when they saw how happy and settled Wayne had become. His siblings were generally supportive, though there were occasional awkward moments at family gatherings as everyone adjusted to the new dynamic. Philip was gradually integrated into family events, his quiet warmth and obvious devotion to Wayne eventually winning over even the most hesitant relatives. The one-year anniversary of their first kiss became a milestone worth celebrating, marking not just the beginning of their romantic relationship, but Wayne's journey toward authentic self-expression. They marked the occasion with a quiet dinner at the restaurant where they'd had their first official date, reflecting on how much had changed and how much they'd both grown. Wayne talked about feeling like a completely different person than he'd been a year earlier, but in the best possible way. Their friend group had largely adapted to their relationship, with most people expressing happiness at seeing both men so obviously fulfilled. The few friendships that hadn't survived the transition were mourned but ultimately accepted as a necessary cost of living authentically. New friendships formed within the LGBTQ community, providing Wayne with role models and mentors as he continued to explore his identity and place in the world. Professional opportunities seemed to open up for both of them as they became more confident and settled in their personal lives. Wayne's work performance improved noticeably as the stress and dissatisfaction that had plagued him in his previous life disappeared. Philip found himself taking on new challenges and responsibilities, his increased happiness and stability providing a foundation for professional growth he hadn't anticipated. They began talking about long-term plans, about the possibility of buying a home together, and the various milestones that lay ahead in their relationship. These conversations felt natural and exciting rather than pressured or premature, both men recognizing that they'd found something worth building a future around. They discussed marriage, adoption, retirement plans, and all the other markers of a committed partnership with the kind of enthusiasm that spoke to deep compatibility and shared values. The intimate moments between them continued to deepen and evolve, with each encounter feeling like both a celebration of their love and a discovery of new dimensions of connection. Wayne's capacity for physical and emotional intimacy seemed to expand constantly, as if years of suppressed desire were finally finding expression. Philip found himself continually amazed by Wayne's responsiveness and the way their physical relationship seemed to strengthen rather than diminish over time. Their communication skills developed through both practice and necessity as they navigated the complexities of Wayne's ongoing coming out process and the various challenges that arose in their relationship. They learned to fight productively, to address concerns before they became major issues, and to support each other through the inevitable stresses and disappointments of daily life. Their conflicts, when they occurred, seemed to bring them closer together rather than driving them apart. Wayne's relationship with his own masculinity continued to evolve as he explored what it meant to be a gay man in a committed relationship. He found freedom in expressing aspects of himself that had been suppressed during his years of trying to fit into heterosexual relationships, discovering interests and preferences he'd never allowed himself to acknowledge. Philip supported this exploration while also helping Wayne understand that there was no single right way to be gay or masculine. The support they provided each other extended beyond their romantic relationship into all areas of their lives. Philip became Wayne's biggest advocate in professional situations, while Wayne encouraged Philip to pursue creative interests he'd long neglected. They functioned as a true partnership, with each person's strengths complementing the other's areas of growth. Their friends often commented on how well matched they seemed, how natural and effortless their relationship appeared from the outside. As the seasons changed and their relationship deepened, both men found themselves reflecting on the unexpected paths that had led them to each other. Wayne often expressed gratitude for Philip's patience during his period of confusion and self-discovery, recognizing that not everyone would have been willing to wait while he figured out his sexuality and what he wanted from life. Philip found himself grateful for Wayne's courage in pursuing authenticity, despite the challenges and uncertainties it brought. Their sex life remained a source of joy and connection, with both men continuing to discover new ways to please and be pleased by each other. The initial awkwardness that might have been expected, given Wayne's inexperience with men, had quickly given way to a natural rhythm and understanding that spoke to their deep compatibility. They approached physical intimacy with a combination of playfulness and reverence that kept their connection fresh and exciting. The holidays brought new traditions as they created their own family unit while maintaining connections with their respective families of origin. They hosted their first Thanksgiving dinner together, a small gathering of close friends and supportive family members that felt like a celebration of the life they were building together. Christmas morning was spent in bed, exchanging gifts and making love and simply reveling in the quiet joy of being together. Wayne's coming out story became something he shared with other men who were questioning their sexuality, offering support and guidance to those facing similar struggles. He found meaning in helping others navigate the challenges he'd overcome, and Philip often marveled at Wayne's generosity and wisdom in these interactions. Their relationship became a source of hope for others, proof that it was never too late to live authentically and find true love. The second year of their relationship brought new challenges and deeper intimacy. They weathered Wayne's father's initial disapproval and subsequent acceptance, Philip's job change and the stress it brought, and various other life events that tested their partnership. Each challenge seemed to strengthen their bond rather than weaken it, proving to both of them that they'd built something solid and lasting. They adopted a dog together, a decision that felt like a natural step toward building the family they both wanted. The process of caring for their pet together revealed new dimensions of their partnership, showing them how well they worked as a team when faced with shared responsibilities. The dog became a beloved member of their household, providing entertainment and companionship, while also serving as a symbol of their commitment to building a life together. Their social circle continued to expand as they became more involved in the local LGBTQ community. They volunteered together at pride events and fundraisers, finding fulfillment and giving back to the community that had welcomed Wayne so warmly. These activities provided opportunities to meet other couples and individuals who shared their values and experiences, creating a chosen family that supplemented their biological families. The physical aspects of their relationship continued to evolve and deepen, with both men becoming more comfortable expressing their desires and exploring new dimensions of intimacy. Wayne's confidence in his own sexuality grew steadily, and he found himself taking more initiative in their physical relationship. Philip delighted in Wayne's growing boldness and the way their sexual connection seemed to strengthen their emotional bond. They began planning a commitment ceremony, wanting to celebrate their love with friends and family, even though legal marriage wasn't yet an option in their state. The planning process brought them closer together as they discussed their values, their vision for their future, and the kind of celebration that would best represent their relationship. They chose a small, intimate gathering that would focus on the significance of their commitment rather than elaborate festivities. Wayne's professional life continued to flourish as he became more confident and authentic in all areas of his life. His colleagues noted his increased energy and focus, and he received a significant promotion that felt like recognition not just of his professional skills, but of his personal growth. Philip supported Wayne through the challenges of increased responsibility while also pursuing his own career advancement. Their travel experiences became more adventurous as Wayne's comfort with his identity grew. They visited gay-friendly destinations around the world, creating memories and experiences that would have been impossible during Wayne's years of confusion and denial. Each trip felt like a celebration of their love and Wayne's journey toward authenticity, with new destinations providing opportunities for growth and discovery. The third year of their relationship brought discussions of adoption and the various ways they might expand their family. These conversations felt natural and exciting, both men recognizing that they'd created a stable and loving environment that would benefit children. They began researching the process and preparing for the various steps that would be required to become parents together. Their extended families had largely adapted to their relationship by this point, with Wayne's parents even expressing pride in the man their son had become since finding love with Philip. Holiday gatherings became more comfortable and inclusive, with both men feeling welcomed and valued by each other's families. The grandparents, who had initially struggled with Wayne's coming out, became some of their biggest supporters once they saw how happy and stable the relationship made both men. The intimate moments between them continued to feel fresh and exciting, even as their relationship matured and stabilized. They learned each other's bodies and preferences thoroughly, but rather than leading to boredom, this knowledge enhanced their physical connection and allowed for deeper levels of pleasure and intimacy. Their sex life remained a priority and a source of joy, with both men making effort to keep this aspect of their relationship vibrant and fulfilling. Their communication skills had developed to the point where they could address almost any issue or concern with honesty and compassion. They'd learned to fight fairly and to support each other through difficult periods without losing sight of their love and commitment. Friends often commented on how well they seemed to understand each other and how effectively they worked as a team in all areas of their lives. The commitment ceremony took place in Philip's parents' backyard, a beautiful autumn celebration that perfectly captured the warmth and authenticity of their relationship. Wayne's vows brought tears to many eyes as he spoke about finding himself through loving Philip, about the way their relationship had allowed him to become the person he was always meant to be. Philip's response focused on the privilege of witnessing Wayne's journey and the joy of building a life with someone so brave and authentic. Their honeymoon was spent in a cabin in the mountains, a week of hiking and cooking together and simply enjoying each other's company without the distractions of daily life. They made love every day, sometimes multiple times, reveling in the freedom to express their passion without any external pressures or obligations. The week felt like a perfect encapsulation of their relationship, peaceful, passionate, and deeply connected. And returning to their regular life after the ceremony and honeymoon felt like settling into something even more solid and permanent than before. They'd made their commitment public and official, and the support and celebration they'd received from friends and family had reinforced their confidence in their relationship. They began referring to each other as husbands, even though legal recognition wasn't yet available in their state. The adoption process began in earnest during their fourth year together, with both men throwing themselves into the preparation and paperwork required to become parents. The process was lengthy and sometimes frustrating, but it also brought them closer together as they discussed their parenting philosophies and prepared their home for children. They attended classes and support groups, learning from other same-sex couples who had successfully navigated the adoption system. Wayne's relationship with his own masculinity had evolved to the point where he felt completely comfortable with his identity as a gay man and husband. He'd found ways to express himself that felt authentic and true, no longer feeling the need to perform or pretend to be someone he wasn't. Philip often marveled at the transformation, remembering the confused and restless man Wayne had been when they first got together and comparing him to the confident and settled person he'd become. Their sex life remained passionate and fulfilling, with both men continuing to find new ways to pleasure and surprise each other. The deep emotional connection they'd built provided a foundation for physical intimacy that seemed to grow stronger rather than weaker over time. They'd learned to communicate their desires clearly and to prioritize each other's satisfaction, creating a sexual relationship that felt both comfortable and exciting. The call from the adoption agency came on a Tuesday morning, informing them that a birth mother had chosen them to parent her unborn child. The news sent both men into a whirlwind of excitement and preparation, as they had only a few weeks to finalize arrangements and prepare for the arrival of their son. Wayne cried when he hung up the phone, overwhelmed by the realization that they were about to become fathers together. The birth was a profound experience for both men. Watching their son enter the world and knowing that they would be responsible for raising him together. Wayne held Philip's hand throughout the delivery, both of them crying as they heard their baby's first cries. The birth mother's generosity in choosing them as parents felt like an incredible gift, and they promised to honor her sacrifice by being the best fathers they could possibly be. And now, 3 months after, bringing their son home, Wayne sat on Philip's couch after another difficult week of adjusting to parenthood, feeling overwhelmed by the challenges and joys of their new reality. The baby had been fussy all week, sleeping poorly and crying more than usual, leaving both men exhausted and emotionally drained. Wayne had arrived at Philip's apartment feeling like he was barely holding himself together, the weight of new parenthood combining with the work stress to create a burden that felt almost unbearable. But when Philip placed his hand on Wayne's back, everything shifted. The simple touch reminded Wayne of all the ways Philip had supported and comforted him throughout their relationship. From that first night when he'd confessed his confusion about his sexuality to this moment when he needed reassurance about their ability to be good parents together. Philip's hand was warm and steady, a physical reminder of the love and partnership that had carried them through every challenge they'd faced. Wayne felt his breathing slow as Philip's touch worked its familiar magic, the tension flowing out of his muscles as he remembered that he wasn't facing these challenges alone. Philip was there beside him, as he had been through every difficult moment and joyful celebration of the past 4 years. They were partners in every sense of the word, and together they could handle whatever parenthood threw at them. The silence stretched between them, comfortable and healing, as Wayne allowed himself to simply exist in the moment of being cared for and supported. Philip's hand remained steady on his back, applying gentle pressure that seemed to anchor Wayne to something solid and reliable. In this simple touch, Wayne could feel all the love and commitment that had brought them to this point, all the promises they'd made to each other, and the life they'd built together. Sometimes the most profound comfort came not from words, but from the simple act of human connection. From the knowledge that someone understood your struggles and was willing to share the burden. Wayne had learned this lesson many times throughout their relationship, but it never failed to surprise him with its power. Philip's touch reminded him that he was loved, supported, and never truly alone, no matter how overwhelming life became. As Wayne relaxed completely under Philip's gentle ministrations, he reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment of quiet intimacy and mutual support. From that first conversation at Stephen's party to this evening of shared exhaustion and comfort, their relationship had been built on moments exactly like this one. Instances of vulnerability met with understanding, confusion met with patience, and need met with generous love. The rough week faded into insignificance as Wayne felt himself held and supported by the man who had become his anchor, his partner, and his greatest source of strength. In Philip's touch, he found not just comfort for the immediate moment, but a reminder of all the reasons he'd chosen this life, this love, and this beautiful, challenging journey they were taking together. Sometimes, Wayne thought as his eyes drifted closed, the simplest gestures carried the deepest meaning, and the most profound love was expressed not in grand declarations, but in the quiet offering of comfort when it was needed most.